Hello, and welcome back to my channel. In today's video, I'm going to be designing a character based off of a bee. I really like bees, they're very small and fluffy, so I decided, hey, why not make a video where I draw them, but as a human? Also, I apologize for any lip smacking sounds you might hear throughout this video. I tried to solve the problem of the audio being in mainly one ear by using my earbuds microphone, but it's just very smacky. So yeah. I'm going to get a phone microphone soon, hopefully. Also, I ran out of storage on the iPad I've been using, so I had to draw and record on my phone, which, because it's such a small screen, I am not used to, and the art isn't as good as I hoped it would be. It's not as good as I know it could be, but I'm still proud of it. So yeah, with that out of the way, let's get into the video. So starting out with the rough sketch, which is even rougher because I'm using my phone to record and draw, I decided that I wanted this character to have kind of a round body, since bees are very round. So that's what I'm doing here. Her arms look really short while I'm drawing them, but that's just because they're kind of at an angle outwards from her body, and also because she's kind of short and round in general, so that makes everything even shorter. But trust me, her arms are proportional to her body. And moving on to her hair, I wanted to give her kind of an afro hairstyle, but less textured than an afro. Now moving on to her shirt, I gave her this really thick, baggy, off-shoulder sweater type shirt, because I just want everything in this picture to look round, fluffy, bee-like, and I also gave her some straps and fluffy pants, and I added strings to her pants just to emphasize that they are in fact pants and not like fluffy legs. And here I'm adding stripes to her shirt because, I mean, what's a bee without its stripes? I also added some hair clips in the shape of, well, kind of wing-shaped, because I'm not actually giving her wings. And here I'm fixing her face shape because the rough sketch was a bit too rough for my liking. And here I'm going in and adding some very, very round eyes, because everything must be round. She gets a round little nose, a nice smile, and some thick bushy eyebrows because they are fun to draw. And they're fluffy. With the sketch in place, I lower the opacity of the layer and begin working on line art. I much prefer drawing on an iPad, but the good thing about drawing on a phone, at least for IBIS Paint, is that when you click force fade, it really makes it force to fade. I got some really nice looking line variation that I wouldn't have gotten if I had just used the iPad, or I would have had to manually go in and add it. But here, it just automatically does it, and it looks really nice. Of course, mobile drawing does have its downsides, and for me, that was that I wasn't really able to connect the lines. And if I did, I would have to be careful not to ruin the line variation, which that gave me a lot of trouble during coloring. Well, not a lot of trouble, but it just made it harder than it needed to be. So moving on to coloring, this is where I had a little bit of trouble, since I had to go in and block off all of the edges where the lines weren't connected so that the bucket tool wouldn't just fill the entire picture. By filling in the character with one color, I could then clip a layer onto it and then not have to worry about coloring outside of the picture when I add in the colors that are supposed to be there. Instead, all I have to worry about is the colors going to a different part of the character that they're not supposed to be. Like if the skin accidentally gets colored into the shirt. Speaking of skin, I gave this character a dark, cool brown color for her skin, since, I mean, bees are dark, so I figured dark skin character. It makes sense. And I chose the reddish purplish skin tone to contrast with the yellow that I would be adding later, since they're complementary colors. For the hair, I just made it a darker version of the skin tone. I don't remember if I made it more purple or more red. It is just darker. And of course, what's a bee without its stripes? So here I'm adding in some stripes. Then I colored in her eyes blue, just to give a nice extra pop of color. I considered coloring them yellow, but that took away too much attention from her shirt, so I kept them blue. I wasn't happy with how her shirt was looking, so I made it a slightly brighter, more desaturated yellow, and I think it looks nicer. Now I've begun working on the background. I put in this nice lilac lavendery colored flower and another because, again, more contrast with the character. Added a stem, the thing in the center that I can't remember what it's called, and then I added some shading to give it more depth. The flowers don't have to be super detailed since I'm just going to blur them out later, but I still wanted them to look fairly nice. Adding in these tiny lines in the petals made the flowers look a lot nicer. Then I took a brush and set it to force fade and just went all around the bottom of the page, creating these little grassy boys. I made a few separate layers for them, and each layer that was closer to the viewer, I had a lighter color. And now here I'm coloring in the sky. I just made it a very, very light blue, added a darker blue gradient, and then I added a dark green gradient at the bottom just to give it more depth, I guess. I don't really know what I was doing, but it looks good. Then I added the character back in and used Gaussian blur on the background layers so that the focus would be on the character. And here I'm fixing up any of my coloring mistakes where I may have gotten outside of the lines. And now on to shading. For the shirt I used a dark purple color set to multiply and with the opacity turned down a whole bunch. I wanted the light to be coming from above, so I made sure that most of the shadows were towards the bottom of the character. Then I faded and blurred out the shading using the blur tool, which it doesn't always look the best, but I do believe that it's the best I have, so I gotta work with what I've got, and I think it looks pretty good. And now I'm adding shading to her skin. So you may notice that the palms of her hands are dark. Don't worry, they won't be for long. I used to always forget to give dark-skinned characters lighter palms, but not this time. And just like I said, here I'm lightening her palms. I took her normal skin tone, and then lightened it, and then just slapped it on there. And now I'm adding shading to her floofy pants. I used the textured cloud brush that I downloaded from Pinterest. Pinterest has a lot of good brushes that people upload, and even though some of them lag, most of them are really good, and even the ones that do lag are really good. So I suggest going and checking them out. I think people even upload Procreate brushes, so if you use that program, then you should still check it out. And now I'm adding shading to her hair. I've never shaded curly-ish hair this short, so it was a bit of a challenge. And I also just realized that I didn't use my normal shading style for it. But I guess because it's so dark, it doesn't really need to be shaded that fancily. And I know that people of color, their hair doesn't really look exactly like this, but for one, I mean, she can have her hair how she wants. And two, I realized my mistake too late to fix it. Plus, I really like how this hair looks. Now on to shading her barrettes and pants ties. I was originally going to make them a different color, but for one, I couldn't decide what color I wanted to make them, and two, having them this nice grayish color adds to the illusion of wings. So now I'm onto her eyes using a darker color at the top and a lighter color at the bottom. I like to add these dark kind of circly things to the eyes. It's something that I sort of stole from Danganronpa, and I also added pupils because I hadn't in the original sketch or the line art. Next I added some highlights to her skin. I didn't feel like doing it for the shirt. It's already a light color because it's yellow, and I just didn't feel like doing it with the black. But I think the highlights on her skin look good even though I did have a bit of trouble. I'm not used to shading darker skin tones, but this was good practice. Next I took the color of her eyes to add some shading to the white part, and then I added some highlights in her irises. Then I added a small dot for an extra highlight on her cheeks, her nose, and her shoulder. I turned the background layer back on and added a glow around the character, which I then lowered the opacity on, just to help separate her even further from the background. I felt like something was missing, so I added a sparkle border. Then I added a darker shadow and lowered the opacity. I felt like some of the sparkles were distracting, so I erased them. Then I added my signature, and the bee girl was finished. Let me know how I did in the comments, and tell me what you would have done differently if you were designing this character. Also tell me what you think we should name this character. I'm kinda going for Beatrice, but I want to know what you think. Also, please consider liking and subscribing. It would really help me out. Anyway, that's it for this video. See ya!